My job is to build on the story of today. So Anthony's given us the macroeconomic outlook. I'm going to look just at the housing market, and I've got some experts here in the room with me, so excuse me if I'm telling what you already know, but some of it might be interesting data and some of the readings we've got. My job within Move With Us now is to put together these, as David said, to put together some of these data, and I'm talking quite a bit with a lot of the commentary people in the media as well. And some of the data that gets thrown out is quite interesting to look through. And I think what we're doing today is sharing with you what we're seeing as trends in the marketplace, how we feel it's going forward, and just giving you the opportunity to make your own minds up on how you want to go forward with your business. But we're sharing with you how we're looking to adapt going forward over the next little while. So without further ado, this shows the number of property transactions according to the HMRC, obviously up to 2012, and you can see there that we've come from a high level in 2004 to 2006 of in excess of 1.75 million transactions, and we've been scuttling around well below the million mark. And I believe that in 2008 we were almost at 500,000 actual transactions, but HMRC has proved me wrong. What it's showing is that the housing market is constrained by supply, and I think everyone here is probably in agreement on that. We had a lack of demand in 2008, 2009, but supply has been eroded very quickly. A lot of developers have had to sell properties and things, have made those adjustments. They've sold them off. Any excess stock is gone now out of the marketplace. And what that's showing is that for us, and again, averages across the UK aren't exactly an excellent sample, but it's showing that the house prices, average asking prices across Great Britain, according to our data, are rising over the period. We're also seeing that the average days to sell in the UK are falling. And you can see regionally, most prices are, in most regions, there has been some slight inflationary pressure on prices or improved prices. And the thing about this, for me, is that we've got some great numbers coming out in that the number of property transactions were up, which was good on 2012 to 2013. This is only quarter on quarter, so we're comparing one quarter on another quarter. You're seeing an average time on market falling, which is great news as well, because it means we're getting these sales agreed much quicker. The average sale price is improving. The number of mortgage approvals is improving. The buy-to-let mortgages is improving, but the numbers that are worrying to me in this whole scenario are the number of new builds completed, which has fallen slightly. There is some contradictory information coming out later on that. And the number of new instructions coming to market has fallen back quarter on quarter for those periods. And then even in the rental market, we're getting yield hotspots. I'm using London as an example. We can produce this data for any town or any region in the UK by postcode, and we use it with homes. So what we'll do is directly compare house prices with rental income and create yields, and that creates these yield hotspots. And you can see where, and we're doing this only on revenue on capital value. So there's no capital increase in value built into this. But if you look at central London, yields are pretty rubbish because you've got very high house prices and it's very hard to get very massive rents, and Russian oligarchs and sheiks don't care about the rent coming in. They usually just leave them empty anyway, don't they? And half of Knightsbridge is empty. And then you look at the outskirts and where these areas are on the outskirts of Greater London, and you can see how yields are looking quite good. And what we're seeing happening is people are moving out from the city, moving into southeast England. So rents are rising more rapidly outside of central London, and we'll probably see house prices following that. And you guys may have experienced that already. So in the state of market, what I want to look at is supply, because if we want to get transaction numbers up, we're going to need to look at how is this supply going to change, or is it going to change in effect? Do we just need to adapt to the norm, the new market norm, and it's like it is for however long it's going to be? And then look at demand, and is demand out of kilter with supply? Because a lot of people have been talking about housing bubbles, particularly in the southeast of England. Let's look at that and see what's happening. And more importantly, does this mean to us? Because at the end of the day, we're here to service the market that we're in. So, home moving trends. What we've found over the last 5 years is there was a particularly outside of the southeast of England. I keep singling southeast of England because it works in a slightly different way, particularly central Greater London. But what we've found is that the people that are building houses to sell, people that are looking to move house, have found that they are equity poor. So when they've gone to want to move house, normally people move on their equity. So they'll move into a house, price goes up a bit, they've got a bit more equity to put down on the next house, so they go and buy a bigger house probably. What we've found is that what we've experienced is that people have been equity poor, they've been locked into their existing property. Borrowing criteria has been reasonably stringent. It's still quite stringent out there. They are loosening to buy-to-let investors, or if you've only got a large deposit to put down, you can get a little bit more flex. But if you're trying to borrow 95%, it's very, very tough indeed. People have adapted to that market. So what has tended to happen is, for instance, I've got a child at school in a quite expensive area, and what a lot of parents have done is rented their house outside of the area and rented a house inside the area. So they've done rent to rent, which effectively takes all these homeowners that own homes have decided that they're going to become accidental landlords because of a need, and particularly people that are moving on short-term contracts. If they've got a 6-month contract, and in Manchester, for instance, and they live in South London, as we've seen with the people from the BBC, what they've tended to do is rent out their own house and use that and keep their asset there, and then rent another house up in Manchester. And I think Manchester's a lovely place. In the last presentation I did, I sort of, being a Chelsea fan, I was a bit anti-Man U, but there we go. But you can see why people would have kept that property off the market. The slide says that people over 60 own £1.28 trillion worth of property. That's about 5 million properties according to my maths, £250,000 a house, that kind of thing, very broadly speaking. And we all know about the schools and amenities are becoming more and more important to people. We're seeing trends where people are being drawn towards amenities, where there is a good hospital, where there are good schools, people are being drawn to those areas. So from a supply side, when you look at just home movers, and there's a record spending now in the do-it-yourself market, because people are saying, well, rather than move, stamp duty in the southeast, that's an issue, because stamp duty at 500,000 is about 4%. So it's a cost that they have to look at as an economic cost, and saying, well, what's my opportunity cost of building something onto my existing house and adding another 1,000 square foot or something, or staying or moving to another house, which is what was normally the case in the past. But overall, belief and confidence is returning. When prices start to show some increase, if there starts to be an increase in prices, the people that are equity poor suddenly become slightly equity rich, and their options open up. So all these things that they've adapted to in the past, they may change. They may not, but they may change for them. So we could see some supply coming from there. House builders, they've had a lot of money thrown at them over the last 5 years, basically. They've had start-up revenues, they've got first-time buyer options going on properties. Help to Buy, which is opening up to the whole of the market now, has been available to them for a lot longer. In fact, I was talking to a house builder recently. 40% of their transactions are a part of a Help to Buy or First Start scheme. So they are doing a lot of their sales are being almost government sponsored, if you like, by this Help to Buy scheme. what they're saying about house builders is all great news at the moment. You know, they're 90% order book is 90% complete. They're building 10 months in advance. It's all fantastic news. You'd think they'd be throwing up houses left, right, and centre. They are actually moving. They are moving houses really quickly. They are still complaining about a shortage of skills. There is a shortage of materials because everything has to catch up. But as Anthony quite well alluded, these things will adjust. They will adjust to the marketplace. But most importantly, this short-termism where most of these house builders are really looking for, and I don't blame them after the last slide, is they're not looking to build volumes of houses, they're looking at margins. So they're not going to build if the demand isn't there. If they see their order book building up, then they'll build to that order book. But they're unlikely to just build speculatively, build a load of houses that are just going to be left there if the market changes. So there's still a constraint on that. Looking at their house building, the supply of house builds are going, you can see that over these last few years, we've got the lowest number of houses being built in the UK. You'd think it's amazing. We're coming out of a recession. It's going to take 3 or 4 years for house builders to start really properly reacting to this. So we're not going to see that supply really come into this market for 3 to 4 years. All of these elements you'd think that if we can build 400,000 houses in the 1930s per annum, we could manage to build 300,000 or 400,000 houses now. Well, clearly not. But if you look at how planning is allocated and how long it takes to go through all these processes, there's no centralisation. When we go through a war, people just suddenly say, you're going to build these houses or you're going to build rockets or whatever it is, and it gets done. In these kind of times, we're reasonably affluent and none of us want someone to build houses on our golf course. It sort of slows the whole thing up. But you've got other things at work in that house builders are there to make profit. They're not there to just supply to willy-nilly to the overall market. They are there to build to a particular, build in line with the demand that's coming from the marketplace. So supply, for me, I can only see supply going up so that we can have about 1.2 million transactions going forward next year. The Help to Buy scheme, we've got down here, it starts in January 2. You can start applying for Help to Buy now. I presume everyone in this room understands what Help to Buy means. This is only going to add to demand. There's going to be more and more sort of 35 to 40-year-olds coming into the marketplace wanting to buy with a 5% deposit. They're going to be looking at those apartments over there. They're going to be looking at, they're going to be eating up supply. And PRS portfolios. We've had meetings now with Parizia and Hearthstone. They're really, Hearthstone are owned by Countrywide more or less, or they own Countrywide. We've had Alliance Holdings in there. So Parizia are a £10 billion 10 billion under management German company. They're coming to the UK. Their first launch is with £400 million to buy properties or build to rent. So they're going to come in and take some of that supply out. And there are more of them coming into the country to buy up blocks of property. Those properties will never go on the open market for sale. You're going to be looking at, they'll buy probably part of a residential development. So there'll be plans for 2,000 properties. They'll take 200 of them and build their own resort almost within the middle of it all. And that's particularly the model for Alliance Holdings. The major house builders, TW and Barratt, they took up that £1 billion fund for build to rent, the equity for build to rent, and they're taking up that. Those properties may come back on the market, but they're going to sell to another portfolio. That's what they'll do, is they'll get the portfolio performing, and then they'll sell it on to another portfolio that comes into the UK. So we've got to look at, and the housing associations now are having to make profits. They're not being subsidised to any great degree by the government anymore. They've got massive asset bases. What the government is saying is work your asset base and charge market rents on some of your properties. So they'll have social rents and market rents within their portfolio, whereas before they were wholly focused on social rents. Now it's all about building market rents, and they're becoming mini developers in their own right, so they can slice out some of the margin for themselves. So we'll see these people taking property, sucking in all this property, and it will be taken out of the property market. We don't know what the effect of that's going to be yet in terms of where it's going to take our supply from, but it is going to take out tenants as well, because they're going to be able to offer a good quality product consistently to a lot of tenants. And what I want to really finish this on is, what does this mean to us? So what we're seeing is the market size is unlikely to increase substantially. Sales prices are likely, in my view, to rise as interest rates remain as they are, and we're seeing interest rates are going to stay there for 2 years. It doesn't take long in a town. If you've got a 20,000 population town and you've got 5 3-bedroom semis on your books, that seems a lot of properties when no one's looking at them. When the market suddenly picks up, all of a sudden one goes, another one goes, another one goes, and you're all of a sudden short of 3-bed semis to sell, and then you've got to go out there. And then how do you go out there and find those new properties to come onto market? So we're going to find that competition will increase. If other people out there, weaker agents that were not there before, or new market entries that are maybe internet-based, this kind of competition will come in to the marketplace once they see it's Klondike season. You know, if the institutional investors are saying invest in the UK housing market, individual business people will say invest in the residential housing market, and there'll be other people coming into the housing market at different stages. What you guys are good at is, because you've proven it year on year and decade on decade, looking at some of you, and I won't look at you, Brendan, because I keep doing that, is that you've been able to adapt to these situations time and time again. So I wouldn't look at it as a complete fear factor, but I think what we've got to look at it and say, right, okay, all this investment will come into the marketplace, all of these things all these movable parts are there, how can we make the most of them? But what it means to us as estate agents is the usual. Are we going to see more and more fee wars? You know, if the only point of differentiation is going to be fees, then you're going to end up, and if the public are trained just to focus on fees as the differentiating point, then there will be fee wars. If you have a point of differentiation, then you've got a way of holding on to your fees. And we'll show you later on, when Ben comes on to talk, how we as a business have had to adapt to, because we're in a very competitive situation on some of our businesses, how we've adapted our business model to overcome fee wars. Up pricing is the next thing. You know, obviously, if you're going to encourage, if you want to tempt a vendor to sell, if they haven't got a massive reason, a massive motivation to sell, then often, you know, us as agents have been tempted sometimes to, well, what's your expectation? Build it up a little bit more and then put it out on the market. Let's see what happens. All of a sudden, one of them sells at that price, and that becomes the norm, right? It is a consequence of lack of supply, because there's still a good supply of service providers, but it's just about is the supply there for the people.